I consent.
He is consented. Oh my gosh. This is Cutting for Sign. You're Daniel Pinner Cline. I'm Ron Cecil.
Yeah,
And
that's how it works.
it's a gift again to get to see you, to hear you, to shoot the shit with you before we started recording.
I
And
just realized. Sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
and we have a crazy opportunity today. We're talking to somebody who's considered the best in the world at what they do today. And I
And
don't
it's
know
not
if
just signing their own name.
I don't know if I've ever spoken to someone face to face in that kind of position. Like, I don't know if I've ever met someone who's considered the top.
The
Have you?
best at something.
Yeah.
It depends on what that thing is. Like, I've trained in certain martial arts where the leader of that martial art was the best at that martial art. So
Yeah.
they were technically the best in the world at something.
That's
But
amazing.
I guess it depends on how many other people in the world do the thing that we're talking about. And a lot of people rock climb.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
It's
a lot
gotten
more people
crazy
rock
popular.
climb than
Yeah.
do the martial art that I was talking about. So
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing. But I was gonna say it's starting to get to the point where we're talking to people who are so interesting that I'm still more interested to see your ugly mug in the morning and excited to see it. I gotta say, man.
Thanks, man.
But it's getting closer.
I'm the best at wearing this ugly face. That's the truth. No one can do it like me.
I don't know. Your son's doing a little better job of it.
Oh, get this, man. Yesterday I was I read to my wife the thing that I sent you. Daniel and I are working on a writing project together. We're just playing some back and forth, little word tennis,
little pickleball.
And I sent my wife and my daughter and I were sitting on our couch. And I was reading it to them both. And my daughter pipes up and she goes, "Can I read to you what I read today?" And I go, "Yeah, of course." So she pulls out this journal from school and fucking reads a story about a little girl who's got a best friend who has depression and doesn't tell anybody about the depression and then dies by suicide. And then the little girl is like thinking about all the regrets of like, should I have seen the signs? Should I have like talked to somebody? And whoa, dude, I was like, holy shit, you're the writer, kiddo. Like, I was like covered in goosebumps listening to her write. Like, she has this access to words when she writes that is I'm jealous of, man. And she was also wrote poetry. She had all kinds of poetry written.
Wow.
I was like covered in goosebumps and also felt like I'm if she wants to, she's got this. If she wants to write, she can fucking write.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Wow.
It's so interesting too when kids come up with stuff because you just feel like it's a little more honest, it's less it's less contrived.
Yeah.
Not always, right? Like some adults do that and do that well. They don't contrive stuff. It comes out really honest. But with kids, it's almost like you kind of always know it is,
I'm already excited to see what she writes next. But it also makes me think like how much of my own writing is very contrived.
Totally, man. I mean, yeah. But you know what? When you were writing stuff for the writing group,
yeah,
that had a nice balance of, I thought at least, like honest and unintentional metaphors. Like remember what one time you were writing that scene with that guy cleaning up the auto shop?
Yeah.
And he was doing all this stuff with the hose and things, and this was all gearing up for him essentially to rape a little boy.
Yeah.
And as I was reading all the like hose play and the cleaning up and the washing things down, I was just like, oh, something ominous is gonna happen, And then we asked you about it, and you're like, yeah, I didn't mean to do that,
Yeah, that's
good.
Thanks, man. God, I hope we don't have to. Apologies to our guest for talking about such a heavy thing right at the front of their show, but dude, it was yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's not like you were doing it lightly. That's something that it comes from your like not your story, but you know what I mean. That's something that's personal thing to you. So
yeah, it's a retelling of someone I know.
I'm sure it wasn't very like fun to write entirely.
No. I've been, man, that's the thing that I think was so great about writing for you yesterday was that I've been my book is dark, man. It's dark as fuck, and it's not super pleasant to have to stay in there all the time. And getting to play with writing was like a nice, fresh, like I needed that. I realized like, I need like some cross training in this.
Yes.
I need to play around and get some other influences and get some other, flows moving in different directions.
That might be an interesting question for Babsy. We were talking about things that we would be interested in speaking to her with.
Yeah.
About, she seems like she's really in the game a lot. What does she do to get out of it? She works that part-time job as a radiologist. That probably does some of the trick. I wonder if part of the reason she carries that job still, when I'm assuming she doesn't have to, but maybe she does, is because it's so fucking different than climbing.
That could be. That's a good question. She strikes me, from what I've read about her and what I've looked at her and watched and all those things, she strikes me as a person who, despite her insane drive, despite her, world-class, elite level of fitness and mental strength, because I think that's the other key around this. Like, there are legions of climbers who are very strong, right? Like, if you were to have feats of strength, tons and tons of climbers would be as strong or stronger, right?
Yeah.
But it's the mental strength that she has, that she's had a long time, that really sets her apart. And that is that, you sent me a voicemail yesterday about joking about going and making yourself do something you didn't want to do. And you're like, isn't that the adult, isn't that what an adult does? And she has that ability, orders of magnitude beyond normal people.
That's an interesting point. I do think that one of the things that adults do, that an adult psyche does, is to do things that they don't want to do. That's easily misunderstood, though, because there's a shitload of people out there doing things they don't want to do, and I would not condone what they're doing.
Yeah,
like going to a job that you hate or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I know, and that's a good clarification, I think, for this episode, is that there are things in our life that we know we should do, we don't, because they're uncomfortable, and our life, the quality of our life, suffers because of it.
As a friend of mine says, 1,000%.
Yeah. Hey, here
it's
she
so
is.
True.
Yeah,
it's so true.
I'm gonna let her in.
Babsi Zangerl, you are widely regarded as the best female climber in the world and National Geographic's 2019 Adventurer of the Year. You found climbing as a teenager and soon completed an ascent of Pura Vida, the hardest boulder climbed by a woman at that time. At age 19, you herniated a disc in your back. Doctor said you'd never climb again. However, you quit bouldering and switched your focus to rope climbing. Since then, you have become the first woman to complete the famed Alpine Trilogy and completed 5 of El Capitan's hardest big wall free climbs, including just the second free ascent of Magic Mushroom. On top of that, you work a part-time job as a radiology assistant. Your contemporaries describe you as relentless and tenacious, but also humble, low-key, and unassuming. Alex Honnold, the famed free soloist, said of you, she's so mellow that it's hard to think of her as the best. You believe in genuinely embracing process and adversity, in holding yourself to strict climbing ethics, that it's more memorable when you have to work extra for a route, and just diving into adventure because people might not know what they're capable of. All right, welcome, Babsi.
Thank you.
I'm really glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Just for all the listeners, it was very difficult for Babsi to hear that because it was way too nice.
A bit too much, maybe.
a bit too much. I don't know about that. I think a lot of people are recognizing something in you that maybe it's better. You think it's too much. I have a question. What your quote at the end of what Daniel just said that you posed a question. People may not know what they're capable of. Is that something that drives you? Because you are doing things that many people are not capable of. And yet you have something inside you that's like, can I do this? And do you do it for yourself or do you do it for others? Like, what's that inspiration for you in there?
No, I think I do it for myself. It's more that I think many people could do that. What I'm doing, it's more that the hardest step sometimes is to start trying something.
Yeah.
And I also have a lot of setbacks a lot of times, and I'm scared on the wall and I have to turn around because I'm too scared to climb, for example.
Yeah.
And if you overcome these fears and work on yourself, then it's just a better feeling, and maybe you're also a bit proud of yourself when you can get over your fears and succeed on something what you thought at the beginning that it's not possible for you.
Do you confront that part of you that overcomes fears, or do you access that through anything else in your life outside of climbing, to the extent that it might even affect your climbing?
I think, you know, I think in life you learn a lot about yourself. What I learn in climbing, I can use also in other parts of my life. I think you know what your limits are, and you know how far you can take that, and this helps, you know, in a lot of things in life. I think it's like having a goal in your mind and you want to reach the goal. You can see it in your job, for example. When you work on yourself, you easier reach a goal in your job or in climbing or whatever. I think it's a lot about motivation, how much you want to do something and how much you love something, how much fun you have doing something. And this you can use for other things in life as well, I think.
So I've had some experience climbing. I started climbing in 1997 and spent some years mostly sport climbing and bouldering, and didn't start trad climbing until I moved to the UK, and actually got to meet Dave McLeod right after he had just put up Rhapsody, and got to coach with him for a day. And most of what we talked about, like he coached me. I hired him to coach me. At the time, Daniel, this guy put up what was considered one of the hardest trad climbs in the world. And a lot of what we talked about was fear. And I realized then, I think I was 27 or 28 at the time. I'm 42 now. Was like my inability to even step up to the challenge because of how much fear I had. And it took me another 10 years to really step up to some routes that I was like still afraid of. What has given you the ability at a young time in your life and then continuously? Because I think over time, fear, if it's not dealt with, will just keep people from really pursuing those bigger goals. And I don't mean just in climbing, but in anything. Like, did you have a parent that helped you work through that? Did you figure out a system or meditation or something as a young person that helped you deal with fear?
No, not really. My parents are not climbers. And in the past, I only did bouldering. I was just focused in bouldering. And due to an injury, I got more and more into rope climbing. And through this process, I learned really a lot because I had so much fear starting, like doing the same sport, but another style.
Yeah.
And for me, it was really hard to take these falls. I didn't have this fear in bouldering, even if it was a high ball, but falling into the rope was such a different feeling. Yeah,
really.
And I was scared, but at the same time, I had the feeling it's not like climbing on rope is not so focused on the grade or how hard you can climb. It was also like the mental part of climbing, especially when you do like longer routes.
Yeah,
it's a huge part, the mental part, to climb a big wall. And this added some extra aspect to climbing, which was really interesting to me. For me, I don't know if I would have the same motivation for climbing if I would do just bouldering at the moment. For me, it's really important to change styles. And it's definitely because of having fear and overcome this process. And those routes where I had the most fear, the routes are the most memorable routes.
Like what? What's a couple of those that you had the most fear on?
I think one of those was Bella Vista in Trecime in South Tyrol. And that one I turned around, I think 3 times. Just climbed up to the big roof.
Yeah.
And it was so scary because when you have falls there, you are so far from the wall that you need mus to get back to the route.
Yeah.
And you're swinging around and it's just a super, super steep roof.
Yeah.
And it was super hard to concentrate just on climbing. and I couldn't get into the focus to concentrate. So
Wow.
I turned around and I didn't even try up there. And on the ground, I was telling myself, why didn't you even try? And then I went back home and I was like questioning myself. And I gained a lot of motivation to just go back and try another time and see if it's better next time.
One of the things that I enjoyed reading about you, and then I watched a couple of the videos on you on YouTube, and you're very process oriented. Like, I liked that you tried for a few days, and then, you know, I think you said you used to believe that after a few days, if you still couldn't get a move, you should go home. But instead you noticed that you were a little bit better or you were a little bit closer after 3 days. And so why don't we put in more time from this place that's now a little closer? And it's just a little bit longer term process oriented thinking. And it's something I value quite a bit, actually. A lot of failure, you know, and I think that failure is not a bad thing, you know, and you reframe failure very easily into a positive thing and a motivator. And I just appreciate that you confront that a lot. And then you'll even talk about, I literally just got too scared and didn't even try. It's like, these are all things that everyone does in many aspects of life. And to hear someone who's like potentially one of the best in the world at something, or is confronting all of those very human things that everyone else at every other level would still confront, it's very nice to hear. You know what I mean? It's refreshing. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
I think one of the things that is difficult to translate to people who are not in the climbing world is the level of commitment and suffering someone like you goes through to achieve some of these bigger goals. Someone, I think, calculated that you've spent over 100 days on El Cap alone. That's, you know, a big wall in Yosemite Valley that's got some of the hardest free routes in the world on. You've put in the time and the effort. You just got back from Pakistan this like a few weeks ago, right? Or a few months ago?
Yeah, a few weeks ago.
Yeah. And it sounds like that was a trip that was kind of challenging for you. You didn't get the route that you had gone down there for. Like,
it was my first expedition.
Was
and and it was really interesting.
What's an expedition? Like just a longer?
No, it's a more remote place. So it took us 1 week from the airport in Islamabad to get to the base camp in Pakistan at the Trango Towers. So it's already a 3 days approach to get there. You go there with horses and with a crew, and they put up tents, and then you're in this place we were there for 5 weeks. And the goal was to try the route Eternal Flame. It's at the peak, the summit is at 6,250 meters, so it's higher altitude, and I never climbed in this altitude before. So for me, it was definitely something new, and also it was kind of hard to see how your body works at this altitude. And we still had to climb hard, you know, at 5,000 meters to climb a 7C is very different compared to climbing a 7C at 1,000 meter altitude. And and also with the weather conditions, we had a quite hard time because it was never perfect. So most of the time it was like minus 10 degrees, strong wind, like fresh snow. And we went up this gully. It's a 5-hour approach, I think 10 times. One time we climbed 2 pitches, and this was the only day we climbed that route we wanted to do.
So you did a 5-hour approach and you had to do it 10 times, or did
10 times. She spent more than a week's worth of work in a gully, a frozen ass gully in Pakistan.
Yeah, that's true.
That's fucking gangster.
I think if all we talked about was the suffering, the rest of this thing, like we would all realize like how little we actually deal with.
Yeah, we carried up all the heavy gear the first days, you know, and you do the acclimatizing the first days. And then at the end of the trip, we carried all the stuff down again because we didn't use the food, we didn't use the gear, we didn't use the ropes. So
what?
It was, it was just not possible. The cracks were always frozen, and the wall was, it was not in
so does that motivate you to come back, or does that make you like distaste expeditions, or are you now like, man, I kind of want that a bit more?
No, we left all the stuff there, so we will go back next year.
Okay.
And hope for better conditions.
Yeah, well, I'll cross my fingers and toes for you too. That's amazing.
And did you do that with your one thing we were talking about before, like through email a little bit, was that your partner is also a climber and you've been together for quite a while, right? Was he on that trip with you?
Yeah, we were together on this trip.
Yeah, if you want to speak a little bit about what it's like to be involved in such an intense passion with a partner also, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool thing to share a passion with your love. You know, this Jacopo is the partner I trust the most in, which makes things definitely easier in climbing. We trust each other a lot, and then you can take a bigger risk as well. And you share all the good moments together, you share a lot of bad moments together. And
wasn't your first date, like, didn't you kind of go for a climb and things went a little pear-shaped, and you knew you were like, I think I can get along with this person?
Yeah, this was a hard day. We were in Marmolata South Face. It's a 800-meter wall, and we got lost at the end of the wall, and we thought that we can get the lift back down at 4 p.m. But we were in the wall at 8 p.m. and it was too cold to sleep. And then we decided to rappel down all the wall. It was about 27 pitches to rappel down, and the belays were not the best. So there you sometimes have rusty pitons, and it's not what you really want to do in this wall. But it was, I thought our only option, because sleeping up there felt too cold. And this was a good test already for our relationship.
Oh my God.
First date.
I gotta say, to translate that to normal folks, like, what they did is fucking dangerous as hell coming back down, and really bonding probably, right? Because you guys are like in the middle of like serious risk land, and you had to really trust each other in that deal. Were you guys also occasionally simul rappelling, or were the rusty pitons too bad to even put that much weight on it?
No, we never did this. Sometimes Jacopo went first, sometimes I went first, and we got lost on the wall, and we had to reclimb the traverses
of
this route. And his German was not the best, and we got super tired, and it was even hard to talk to each other, because his mother language is Italian and my mother language is German. So it was a really somehow funny experience, but at the same time it was serious. And we didn't have any fight, and Jacopo stayed super calm in this situation as well. Wow. So it was it never felt nobody was freaking out. Was good.
I saw the video of you guys going to Scotland together and climbing Dumbarton Rock, and you doing the second ascent of the first E10 in Scotland. And I forget the name of the route.
Achemine.
Okay, yeah. So Daniel, that was put up by the guy that I mentioned earlier, Dave McLeod, and is
that the one they're doing all the quarry mine?
No, this was earlier in her career, a few years ago, I think. Okay. And but what stood out to me about that climb was watching your partner like watch you as he was belaying you as you're doing the final like 12 or 13 meter run out, and which means like she's far above her last piece of gear, and it's a pretty sketchy fall potential. Yeah. And you mentioned in the video that he was kind of mad at you watching you do that. Yeah, does it also feel like you have a little bit more power or a little bit more bravery with him around?
On this trip, he climbed Rhapsody, and this is a much bigger run.
Like the fifth ascent, right? He did.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the fifth, but he did it, and this was even a bigger run out and more scary than the route I did. On Achemine, I had very good protection. So I fall into a bomber gear.
Yeah.
And the fall was a huge fall, but not very dangerous. So
what's huge? Would be like 50 feet.
It was about, when you fall at the cracks, it was about 10 meters or 12-meter fall. It was not more. And after the cracks, you should not fall, but it's also much easier. So when you work the route before in top rope, then it's always a different game because you already know what comes next and you know the moves. So I was sure that I will not fall after the hard part.
Yeah.
This makes it more.
So how do you guys
to do that?
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You guys climb a lot together, right? You're climbing weekly, hanging out, you live together. This is like your, normal life as partners. Do you guys try to spend time apart?
Yeah, of course. We spend so much time together. Most of the projects we are doing together.
Is that why you keep your radiology job?
Maybe it's also a reason. We definitely have to do sometimes different things, and apart from each other, it's, I think, important for a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Don't spend 100% time all together.
That's amazing.
So sometimes I climb with my sisters and I go on holiday trip with my sisters. And at the moment, for example, he's in Valdiorko for trad climbing, and I'm around home to climb with my sisters. So it's
awesome.
Also often like that.
So you come from a family of pretty strong climbers, right? Like you have siblings that are also, some of them are strong climbers. You're one of 5, is that right?
Yeah, we have 5.
Yep.
I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and the 2 sisters are climbers. One is a beginner, my younger sister, and my older sister started at the same time when I started climbing. We started together, and my older brother, took us the first time to the gym, and there we started. Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Daniel.
No, you're all right.
I was gonna say, I what year did you start climbing?
How?
What year was it when you started climbing?
It was, I think, 2001.
Amazing. When I started climbing, I thought I was going to be good. I was convinced for at least a year that I was going to be good, until I realized I was not good.
No, that's for sure not true.
Yeah, but Ron, hold on real quick. Let's tease that out.
Yeah.
Because that kind of language is kind of like, okay, you're being humble, I get that, but you would never say that to someone else. Like you would never say like, no, you're not good. So what do you mean by good? What do you really mean by good and not good?
I mean, probably the number one thing is I didn't have the mental capacity, like the mental fortitude to climb as bravely as I wanted to. And I've never been able to break through that. Like I've done, some okay climbs but that mental toughness that you're not really haven't talked about it that much, and you're kind of gliding over some of those difficulties, but what is really required to be a really good climber is,
when you say good, you mean professional? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I wouldn't even say professional. For me, I always wanted, when I started climbing, I wanted to be a strong trad climber. In other words, I wanted to climb over 512 on trad gear. That was like my goal. And I was never able to achieve that goal. I was never able to do it. I climbed, I bouldered kind of that level. I sport climbed kind of that level. I top roped, a little bit harder than that, but real trad climbing on that, I was never able to do. My mind I could never get my nervous system to obey my desires. I would get in locations and my body would start shaking, and it was embarrassing. I mean, it was like, not fun. And honestly, it's kind of a reason I've let it fall away from my life, because the last time I climbed, Babsi was in 2 years ago in 2019, and I did the regular round and half dome. And I was like, I'm done. Not really.
But go ahead. Did you have a comfort zone, like climbing a bit easier where you felt comfortable with the fear, or was it always when you put on your shoes and your tread gear, you were scared to
good? I mean,
climb?
that's a good question. I've been as afraid on like 5/8 runouts, bolted runouts in like Joshua Tree, you know, like those long routes that don't have a lot of bolts in between them, and that seemed as scary as anything to me, and my brain could just never, I could never get into the flow state, you know what I mean? And where I see climbers who can like will their body into action, into not just action, but into like there is skill being executed, there is intelligence being executed, and I could never get out of like my reptilian brain fight or flight or freeze thing, and it was always just on the cusp of the outside of that if I was able to do anything. And I finally realized I had to stop being mad at myself for it. Like I just was like, okay, that's just what I am, and I got to be okay with that, because I don't want to live with any regrets in my life.
But my sister is also really scared in climbing, even in sport climbing. She's super scared.
Yeah.
And most of the time I put up a top rope for her.
Sure.
And now she's climbing now for 2 years. And now she's okay to lead a 6A, and she can climb 7A. And nice. For her, the best solution was just try the hard routes on top rope and try the easy routes on lead. And she also had the feeling that she was feeling so bad about herself that she didn't have fun climbing on lead. Totally. And then I also had the feeling that maybe it's better for her to just don't do it. Climb on top rope and have fun.
Have fun.
Rope. You don't have to, you know. You can also enjoy climbing in a different way. And now, at the beginning, she never thought that she will lead a 6A ever. And now, today, she leaded 1/6A plus.
She did today?
1/6A. Yeah.
Oh,
today.
Congrats to her. That's amazing. That's so good.
Cool.
So Ron, what would be like if you were to reinvent your relationship with climbing, and let's just assume at some point in time in your life you would, what might that look like? Because and let me preface this actually just a little bit. I used to be a distance runner, and like pretty extreme distance runner, not professional or anything like that, but pretty extreme, ran for my college, blah blah blah. But I didn't do it right. I abused my body and I abused my mind, and I kind of know what I would do if I were to redo it. But I also have reinvented my relationship with running now to fit my life. And the body that I created partially via doing all of that abusive running. So I'm kind of curious what it would look like, maybe if it can check all the boxes it possibly can without being something that would really take away from your life. You know what I mean?
That's a good question. I think I've been falling in love with distance running. Like, you know, more, you know, anytime I go run for like more than an hour, like an hour or two. And I like that. I liked climbing Half Dome in the sense that I liked the all-day fitness that was required and all the different skills that were required. And I think if I get back into it, I will be more focused on like, you know, moving fast in the mountains and just enjoying being out there rather than the pure difficulty. And, you know, I mean, I was pulling on gear all up and down that route, you know, like I wasn't interested in trying to free climb that thing. I was just trying to go fast. And that actually gave me some freedom to just enjoy myself and be outside rather than compare myself to some skill level that I just couldn't do. I mean, honestly, one of the things that happened was not on that climb, but in my climbing career is like, I would really focus on, let's say like some kind of fitness. And then I would get injured. And because I didn't have the restraint to keep it eased back. And I fought shoulder injuries and tendonitis and finger injuries so much that I did it to myself. I knew I shouldn't have pushed myself as often as I did, but I would. And I think that's another thing that is amazing about you, Babsi, is that you somehow have this like either intuition or education or both, where you've been able to maintain this level of fitness and mental strength to really push yourself. Like, how conscious of you are around this? Are you keeping a journal of like your food and recovery and all those things? Like, is it systematic or is it just intuitive?
No, there is no system at all, but it would be better to have a system sometimes. It's just, I have some time I climb 10 days in a row, and I should make a rest day, but I don't do it. And then you climb every day worse and worse and worse, but I just want to check out a lot of different cracks, and I still enjoy it and climb a little bit easier because I know I don't have enough power left for hard routes. And for me, it's a lot. I have the times where I need easy climbing. And I don't want to have a project. And then I have times where I want to focus on a project and invest a lot of time to do this project. But it's not all the time like this. I also have times where I'm less motivated for climbing and times where I'm more motivated for climbing. And for me, it helps the most to change styles of climbing. So I really like to sport climbing because it's so simple. You don't need much gear. And trad climbing, you need much gear. If you do a big wall, it can be a big mess with everything, you know, haul bags and bottle ledge, and it's a huge adventure to me. But I also like the simplicity of bouldering or sport climbing, and I have to change and do everything to keep my motivation high all the time. And I don't have a system. And with eating, I try to eat healthy. But I really like sugar, and I eat chocolate, and I eat a lot of bad stuff as well. And I love coffee, and maybe I drink too much coffee. But when I would, when I would not allow myself to be flexible in eating and to eat everything, then I would probably have less motivation for climbing. I can't imagine it would be hard for me to have a diet and to try to be as light as possible and still have the same mind and be the same motivated for projects. I think you need to find your own balance. That is what works for yourself.
I'm really glad to see that in the climbing world. I know Beth Rodden has spoken a lot about it, and other climbers are starting to speak out loud about it. And that is the obsessiveness that can come with that ultra level of fitness and climbing ability. Like, it also comes with this, sometimes the added weight of needing or wanting, or the feeling of needing to be light, and the eating disorders that happen around that. Ooh. And it was really bad, I'd say, in the 80s and early 90s, and it's starting to taper off. But I know that it's still been in that climbing world, and I'm glad to hear that that's not something you've struggled with, and you've given yourself the freedom to eat intuitively and enjoy yourself. That's great.
Babsi, but I know you asked us to keep it to 30 to 40 minutes. We're around that time. Before we lose you.
It's okay.
You're okay. Okay.
Yeah, if you get tired, you can give us the signal, and you were done. We don't have to drag you out.
It's just, my English is not the best, and I was a bit scared that I have some troubles to talk.
This is like 5A climbing for you. You're doing great.
No.
Well, I was curious when we were reading the intro and we were kind of discussing, if you checked off on it, you mentioned there's a lot of other women, particularly that are doing a lot of amazing climbing. And I just wanted to know if you wanted to speak to anything around that.
Yeah, I think there are many, many women out there who are extremely strong, way stronger than I am. And also with the next generation, what's coming, you see so many very young climbers who already climb harder than most of the older generations.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And this is amazing. And I think, there are some styles of climbing where less women doing that, for example. I think there are not so many women who are doing big walls compared to sport climbing or bouldering, but I think in the future it will be different, and more people in general will experience that you can find so much more in climbing. It's not about sending a hard route. Sometimes it's just about to have a great adventure, and you can have a great adventure also in an easy climb, which can be super challenging because it's scary, for example, or because it's it's long and you have to carry all your sleeping stuff up there and being in a nice place. And this can give you the same, I think it can really give you the same than succeeding on a hard route.
Yeah.
And also I sometimes have the problem when you run from project to project, you don't even see the things around. And in climbing, you can experience so much cool, easy routes. And I have to say, when you go to a wall, sometimes it's just better to choose the best looking line.
Yeah.
Which is most of the time better than the one which has the perfect grade, what is in your mind, for example, what you want to reach also.
Do you feel like a leader in the climbing community in any way?
No, not at all. I don't do that.
If someone tried to hand you the baton of leadership, would you just drop it? You're like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I would drop it probably.
Because I was thinking,
usually
go
good
ahead,
things
Daniel.
for a leader to, you know what I mean? Like, usually leaders don't really want to do it, but they probably be.
That makes you the default leader.
Sometimes,
sometimes. I think what you're exemplifying in your climbing career is you're not running from difficult things and hard things, and you're running towards adventure. And as you're talking about that generation coming up underneath you, like, I started climbing in the 90s in a place in the country that had very few climbers, and I was desperate for mentorship, and I would find it every once in a while, and it would accelerate my climbing a good amount. Are you finding yourself leading young women or young climbers in your part of the world or globally, or people who might be, climbing with some of the same brands that you climb with? Are you willing to step into that space and help mentor the next generation?
For me, it's kind of hard to see that. I think I'm a normal climber as anybody else around home, and around home there are a lot of strong climbers as well. And but I definitely see that the younger generation, sometimes I go climbing together with younger girls and younger people, and I'm always psyched to get them into alpine climbing and do some multi-pitch climbing, because we have so many beautiful routes around Tyrol and Vorarlberg, and it's always nice to see that I can get somebody psyched on the routes I already did. I really like that.
Well, I made my wife and my daughter watch some of your climbing videos last night, and my daughter, who's 9, was enthralled and very excited about watching you, and my wife is afraid of heights, and so she's just getting afraid watching you climb, and she's like, oh, I can't even do this. When we first got together, she's from Oregon, and I begged her to take me to Smith Rock when we first started dating, and we went to Smith Rock, and she's like, I want to do this with you. And I took her to an easy multi-pitch route, and no, it wasn't even multi-pitch. It was just an easy route, and I soloed to the anchor to set up a top rope for her, and then belayed her from the top. And before I took off to climb, she looked at me, and she looked me right in the eye, and she like either grabbed my shoulders or my head or something, and she goes, I love you. And I was like, love you. And
well done.
And where we were standing, it was before I even started climbing, is high above the river that is below Smith Rock. So it feels high. Your brain feels like you're up high, even though you're still on the ground. So I take off and I put her on belay, and she climbs up to it, and she comes to the top of the ledge, like her whole body shaking, elbows and knees, and everything gets there. And I was not thinking at that moment that this person, my wife, was my girlfriend at the time, like, was really afraid, and she needed to be soothed. She needed to be told it was safe and she was going to be okay and all those things. And I just like didn't catch any of that stuff and was kind of a jerk. Like, I wasn't that pleasant. And she has never climbed with me again.
You should be really thankful that wasn't your first date like it was with Babsi and I.
know, seriously, dude. Yeah, she would have hit the ejector seat on me big time. Big time. There's something else I wanted to ask you before we let you go, Babsi. This is from one of my best friends and my earliest climbing partners, Dan Urban. Dan, I love you, buddy. I hope you're listening to this. Dan and I started climbing together. He was 19, I think, and he's now 39, and he lives in Bishop. And I said, hey, do you have any questions for Babsi? Because he still climbs. He's a really good climber. And he joked and said, does she have any beta for Everything is Karate near Bishop? Because I don't even know if you remember that route, but apparently you and your partner came in and just like crushed it in short order. And he's about to leave Bishop in December and he wants to get on it. And he's a little afraid. I don't know if he's afraid to get on it or just thinks it's in over his head. But if you got any advice for Dan, let me know.
Yeah, it's a super good route, and for me it was the hardest Richie move at the end. So it helps if you are tall. Is he tall or is
he's tall? Yeah.
Okay, then he will do it.
He's gonna do it. All right, you said it. Then he's gonna do it. That's fantastic. That's great.
But there's a specific move at the end that you're talking about.
Yeah, I had to take intermediate with my middle finger, was like one little edge, and then go again. And this was the crux move for me at the very top.
You think if you were taller, you wouldn't have had to use that one mono to bump up?
Yeah, Jacopo did it straight up, like all the way directly to this hold.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah,
Babsi, do you know Timmy O'Neill? I
know him, of course, but I never personally met him.
You've never climbed with him?
No, I only saw his videos,
Yeah.
He's always the very funny guy of all
he is hilarious. Yeah.
I'm just curious this might be a stupid question, but was one of the reasons you agreed to be on here was because he was on here? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, and he told me that he was doing that for you, and
really,
and yeah, he told me, and because he was like texting me on social media, and also with this event was going on in Yosemite Valley right now, and I am of course I really like all the characters, like the generation of Yosemite, and for me it's always cool to meet these people. Doesn't matter if it's in real or on texting, and
I mean, with your with your achievements in Yosemite, I'm surprised you haven't been turned into an honorary rock monkey or stone master out there.
I met a few of them.
Yeah.
And Django Chuck.
Yeah, you met Django?
Yeah, this was pretty funny. This was
I didn't know you're still haunting around Yosemite. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, he was there, I think 3 years I met him. The last year when I was there, it was 2019. I didn't met him anymore, and it was always in the food court and not slacklining or climbing. But so, it was really cool to see him.
Daniel, there's a guy named Chongo who was like this resident metaphysical monk that some would call homeless, but he's just lived in the valley on and off for decades, and kind of started the slacklining extravaganza that's been going on for the last 20 years. And has written on all kinds of things from climbing to metaphysics, and is he's kind of the sage of Yosemite Valley in some ways. Yeah. Curious fellow.
I just have to ask another question. Your radiology job, I'm just curious why you anchor that thing down. Why do you keep that?
Because I really like it, and I need to have something next to climbing. And this is where I have the feeling I do something useful for other people. And I enjoy to get out of this climbing bubble and to talk to people who are not related to climbing at all. Yeah. So when I'm at my job. I don't talk about climbing at all.
Yeah.
And I really like this part of my life, to have something else and something completely different. I couldn't have a job in climbing, like Jacopo is doing, for example, route setting. For me, it would be really hard to find motivation for climbing if I would have a job which is connected with climbing. So
interesting.
this is the best way to have a balance.
Does that feel weird to come, for instance, you're coming back from your expedition from Pakistan, being in one of the, the most famous big like climbing, like Trango Towers is, wild, like super wild. And does your body have or does your mind have like a disconnection when you come back to reality and you're going back to work and you're thinking like, a number of hours ago, I was in a frozen gully, or it took us a week to come out of there. How does your mental state fluctuate coming in and out of those realities?
Yeah, it's really, and for me, it's a good feeling to have this in my life. It's always nice to come back home and to have to get up at 6 a.m, go to my job and do a normal job, do a 24-hour shift. Don't talk about climbing, don't talk about this gully. I have it in my mind, but when I'm there, I try to don't speak about that. It's just different.
See, Ron, it's like you and I talking about our alter egos, right? We'll like have this other part of ourselves that can live. And I mean, I'm joking a little bit, Babsi, but I think there's some wisdom there, obviously, in compartmentalizing parts of your life, but also making that other compartment, like, you don't have, I'm assuming you don't have to do that. Maybe you do, but a lot of people don't have to do that other thing that they need to do. And I just think it's cool when you do that. Yeah,
that's admirable.
I think it's good for the motivation, because for me, I don't like to be on the road all year long. I lose motivation when I do that. And for me, it's always important to come back home to gain motivation and go to work and then gain my motivation and making up new dreams, new plans, and then go for it after I have to work. Sometimes it can be stressful because it's always like coming home next day shift and then finishing the work, and then I'm gone doing something completely different. But
radiology is taking x-rays, or is it x-rays, MRIs, all kinds of stuff? What is it that you do? I'm just curious.
It's a computer tomography and the normal emergency x-ray.
Oh, okay.
So CT, computer tomography, and also
CT scan,
MRI, CT scan or MRI, so it's mostly everything. And a lot of accidents, in winter it's all about the ski accidents, in summer it's all about the biking accidents.
Have you ever helped a person who had a break from climbing or a CT from climbing? Have you ever done that?
What do you mean? Sorry.
Like, has anyone ever come in with a broken something and had to get something scanned because of climbing? You know what I mean?
A lot of times.
Really? Do they recognize you?
Sometimes people asking me, I have to check my fingers getting bigger and bigger, and do you think x-ray would make sense? And I say no, but we could make one. And then I make an x-ray, and then you see the fingers are big, but it's not the bones,
Oh man.
And sometimes most of the time when there is a climbing accident, sometimes the climbers call me before they're coming to the hospital and ask
really?
Cool.
I'm there.
Yeah.
But most of the time I'm not there.
I was going to say, you seem like, sorry, real quick. You seem like the type of person that if a climber came in and didn't recognize you, you probably wouldn't tell them who you were.
No, never.
I think I'm kind of jealous of your humility. My ego would just be like bubbling out of me.
Well, plus it would probably make that person's whole year. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Are you interested in talking about climbing injuries like Dave McLeod is? You know, I know he's written a lot about climbing injuries and climbing physiology and all that. Is that an interest of you, of talking about training and prehab and rehab and all those things?
No, not really. I think it's for everybody so different to approach an injury. And for me, with my back injury, I was struggling for more than 5 years, and it's still sometimes a problem. Wow. And I did all these exercises which are important, and I went to a lot of different guys who wanted to help. I tried out everything, but at the end, it was more stepping back and do nothing for a very long time, and then get back to climbing. And I used climbing as a therapy with doing rope climbing, just stop roping. Yeah. And this was the first time where I had the feeling my back is getting better, and I had to stop bouldering completely at this time. Yeah. And at this stage, for me, it would have been really hard to find the way back to bouldering. I tried it for 5 years, and it was just not enjoyable because the pain was always there, and then I really had to take this step and do something else, and this was the solution. So sometimes it depends on the injury, but sometimes I just think sometimes it's
two
better
more questions.
to
go ahead.
too much exercises and don't focus too much on your injury. Sometimes it's easier to do something different for a certain time and then
absolutely.
Yeah,
that's varied movement. It's like having a I look at movement as a diet a lot of times, and the key for me in my brain, at least the way I was wired, is like I'll get upset. I used to get obsessive about a movement, you know, and so distance running, which is high impact and very intoxicating, was terrible for me because I got addicted to something that if you did a lot of it was going to hurt your body. And in my life, part of my life story has been that learning to vary my movement. And so getting into different, like into yoga and into dance and into just different mobility movements. And like, I recently got into a pretty gnarly bicycle accident, and I cracked my skull and had a terrible concussion, and I tore my shoulder up. And I knew that I had to come down to California home. I knew I had to move after that, which is a whole nother story. But the reason is because it's warm here, and I knew that I would play baseball and basketball, and I would swim, and I would do all of these different things. And it worked. I ended up varying my movement, and I healed. You know, so I like that you've spoken about that a couple of times. I'm really a proponent of a varied movement diet throughout life.
Do you practice any kind of meditation or any other practices for reflection or mental growth or mental stability or spiritual health?
No, I tried meditation. Jacob's mother is really into meditation, and she tried to teach me a little to get into it, but no chance. It's hard.
It's very hard. It's very hard.
I think it would be very good, but for me it's hard to stop thinking, and it's not easy. Maybe I should try again.
Maybe.
I don't know how much it is about stopping thinking as it is observing your thoughts. Just a little side note.
Yeah, that's probably true.
That's great. Well, what are you looking forward to in the next seasons? Are you going into winter climbing mode, which is just sport climbing, or are you doing some ice climbing or more alpine climbing? Or are there even bigger projects looming maybe in 2022 beyond Pakistan?
Yeah, in winter, most of the time we stay around home in winter because we also enjoy skiing. We have a big ski resort close to home, the Adelberg region, and there we do a lot of backcountry skiing, ski touring, which we really enjoy. And we combine this with training. So the winter season is for us always the training season.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of time in the gym. And after this, I think in spring I want to go sport climbing. In summer we will go to Pakistan, which will be a big project again. And we have a route in mind in Val di Mello. It's called the Little Yosemite. It's in Italy, and it's also a big wall. It's about I think 800 meters high, and there is an age route we want to try to see if it's possible to free climb.
Yeah.
What is sport climbing? You mentioned that several times. What is sport climbing for the lay people out here?
Sport climbing is climbing in a climbing crack, routes between 15 to 30 meters high, and you clip bolts, and
so it'd be like bouldering, then sport climbing, then big walls. That would those are all bigger than the one before them. Bouldering small, then sport climbing. Okay.
Yeah, something like that. That's amazing. Well, Babsi, thank you so much. We'll let you go. And thank you.
Thank you
for your time. Like, this has been a huge gift, and I'm truly inspired by your lifestyle and your accomplishments. And it makes me realize, it goes back to your quote, the quote that Daniel read from you at the beginning, which is like, and it prompts the curiosity of what are we capable of if we really tried hard. And that's a journey I've been on for the last couple of years, of really pushing myself into more and more difficult things. And it's only paid dividends. It's only been good. So I appreciate that. We need folks like you showing the regular folks that it's like cool things are achievable if you're able to push yourself a bit.
Yeah, Babsi, we call this podcast Cutting for Sign, and it's a metaphor that just basically means looking for the signs along our journey through life that are meaningful and that guide us to a better version or expression or experience of ourselves. And for me, every time we have someone on here, I usually find something, just the selfish part. I mean, I hope I'm providing that also, but I'm also got a lookout for myself. And when I was watching you work on that one wall where they've got the quarry right behind it, that was really well filmed, by the way, where they showed this beautiful wall and then the drone pans to the other side and the thing's being fucking eaten away by this mining operation. That was dramatic. But then it shows you going up, and it shows a little bit of your process, and it does a really good job of showing how much you have invested every time you climb and fall. You're really losing a lot of ground, and then you have to start again, but you have to start again with less energy. You know what I mean? I'm assuming, but it reminds me of like that nice line in that poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling, where he says, if you can stoop, I'm going to butcher it, but the gist is, if you can lose the things that you've given your life to and then stoop and build them up again with worn out tools, that's like a really huge part of being an adult and having a successful life. And I just have become more and more aware that life is a process, that it's okay to fall, that when I'm falling, that's not failure, that's a step towards success, depending on how I respond. And just like this long, slow progression instead of a quick success. And I really value when people do that and are proponents of that. And it just seems like that's part of your jam and one of the reasons you're so successful. And it's meaningful to me.
I think you have to enjoy the process. Otherwise, the whole thing is not really enjoyable when you only focus on the goal, on the peak.
Well said. Great. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. We'll reach out to you when we get this posted, but until then, thank you so much. We really appreciate everything you've done, and keep shredding.
Thank you. Great to talk to you.
It was awesome. Take care, Babsi.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Field dressing 38, Babsi
Zangerl.
That is some subtle accent that I'm unable to achieve.
Zangerl.
That is harder to pronounce than the climbs that she can do. That's dude, she is under I mean, I know English is her second language, but she is even more humble than I expected. And
She was like pissed that we said a bunch of nice stuff about her. It was
oh
really
yeah, at the
charming.
beginning, yeah.
I was
It
like,
is charming. It
I
is
was like,
charming.
this is the humble, unassuming part. Don't take this personally. This
Yeah.
is just humble. You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I didn't get that sense at all. Like
No, she
I
wasn't
mean,
pissed. She wasn't
dude,
pissed.
you know, you were reading, I mean, those all, she did all those things. It's not like,
Yeah.
you know, but the even, gosh, even in just glossing over the things that she's done in her description of it, like there's no way we could spend the rest of an hour talking about how hard they actually are. I mean, it's, you know,
Yeah.
it's beyond ultra marathon level stuff. It's beyond like, you know, it's really into that kind of like, this is the cutting edge of human potential,
Well,
human
you know,
ability.
exactly, man. And that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons when I was writing the intro for her, there's such a big emphasis on the things that I've written about her, that she's the best woman at this and
Yeah.
among the best women at that and the first woman to do this. And that's kind of why I checked in with her before we talked. Are you comfortable with that? Because there's a lot of language these days around the gray areas in between gender, and it's just
Totally,
made,
yeah.
anytime I compliment or I hear a compliment or something is said about a woman, it's almost like it makes me cringe a little bit, because the truth is that at least from what I was reading and watching, is she's one of the best climbers in the world, you know.
Yeah.
She's not just one of the best female climbers, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And even if she wasn't, it's just like there's something about that. It's like we're talking about the top 1% of the top 1%, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, just, she's one of the best climbers in the world, it's a period.
You know, and in that regard, not to steal her thunder, but her partner is as well. Like so much of what she's done, he's done. But because he's not the first ascensionist or any of those things, like he kind of gets pushed aside. And I thought, holy shit, like I don't know how the spotlight's not on this guy more too. And especially them as a power couple, because what they've done together is like, that doesn't happen very often. I can only think of one other couple that has gone through something similar in the climbing world. I mean, they are truly special in their ability and in their connection, like that. It's really, really, really rare and so cool.
I wonder if there's stuff that she's done that he couldn't do.
Why didn't we ask her that?
I know, that's pretty. I bet there is. If I had to guess, I would bet there is.
Maybe so. I know that
maybe not.
I don't know. I mean, he is a very, very good climber, very strong, capable climber. I mean, she was kind of trying to show us an example of that by speaking on their trip to Scotland, and there's these Dave McLeod routes that are right next to each other on this like weird rock in the middle of this giant town in Scotland, and he put them both up. They were unrepeated for years, and I mean, the funny thing is like his quote unquote hardest one has seen more ascents than like the other one that she did. She's only she did the second ascent. In other words, he's climbed it once, no one else has, then she did it. And then the other route, which her boyfriend or partner, I think it was like third, fourth, or fifth guy on there, but it's slightly technically harder. You know, you need a bit more strength or reach or whatever. But she was, I don't know if you saw the video on that one, but she said she was too scared to try it. And that's the other thing I love about her, is that she talks about fear so kind of the way Timmy talked about failure. Like, she's not afraid of it. She's not afraid to talk about it. She's really comfortable with her experience with it. And I think that's, if I had to answer your story again, or answer your question again about how I would reestablish my relationship with climbing, I would recognize that fear is a part of it. And I would like try to find out how to welcome that in my life more.
Yeah. And you might, sorry, you say more?
I mean, I'm just thinking about all the other stuff I'm doing in my life. Like it's required me to lead out in fear.
I think that you're taking a subconscious break that feels like potentially a permanent break from climbing, but but something that's also going on, whether you return to it or not,
Yeah.
is that you're addressing other aspects of your life that, and maybe you're addressing the same aspects from other angles, like fear, that when you, if and when you return to climbing or anything else you haven't done for a long time, you would probably be a better climber in some ways, having not climbed. And I believe when people practice several different things, or they keep practicing the sort of inward adventure we're all on, we're growing up emotionally, we're adjusting our beliefs, our thought patterns, our habits. If we do that, we can take long breaks from things we're passionate about and not be leaving it behind. We're still essentially working on it. If you return to it and you adjust and you approach it honestly again, and you might find that, like, for example, maybe you return to climbing and you accept that you just have a base level of fear that you will reach at a certain height or sketchiness, and that it's not like Babsi's situation or many other people's, where you can get through it, you can get over it. Maybe that's just your limit. Yeah. Maybe your challenge is to enjoy climbing below that and within that, and just enjoy your, and accept. Maybe that's not it. Maybe you get beyond that, but you know what I mean? Yeah,
totally. No, I've kind of, I've realized that I'm probably will never quit anything, if that makes sense. Like, I haven't had a motorcycle in years, but I still like, want to, if I get a chance to ride a bike, I'm going to ride it, like it, and have a good time. Yeah. And with climbing, I'm waiting. It's almost like it feels like there needs to be a season again that opens up where it just makes sense for me to go do it. Yeah. And, but I had so many injuries from climbing so long that break she talked about, like her back, she had a serious spine compression and injury. Yeah. And ultimately she said the only thing I could do is just not climb for a while and do nothing. And I think that, like, my arms and shoulders feel the best they have had since I've been an adult because of not climbing. And so it's kind of, I'm a little nervous about returning to that, but I also know, because of what I've been doing, the exercise I've been doing, that I'm like kind of the most stable I've ever been physically, like my shoulders, core, arms, hip, it's feeling great. I'm loving it right now.
But plus it's probably a matter of degree, it's like, what if you were climbing 5 days a week and then you climbed once every 2 weeks, or once a week, or a little bit, a fifth as much as you did, but it's every day. Like, I just think there's so many ways to adjust and refit things that we loved and maybe abused in the past back into our lives. Like, now, for a long time, I didn't run because I just liked same thing you said. I just liked walking around without hurting. It felt great. Like, walking became such a joy. Yeah. And now I can go for like maybe a 1 or 2 mile run. Right. And I feel spry, I feel young, I feel great. I get the endorphins, but I only have to do it about once every 2 weeks. It's great. I love it. Yeah. I used to need to go for a 10-mile run 6 days a week, to get my fix.
Was that right? Did it feel like you had to, like, but bite off more every time? It was just, you had to take a bigger scoop to get that same place?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I wouldn't say it's that like much like that experience of drugs, but but yeah, I'm greedy. Like, there's a part of my mind that if I neglect other aspects of my life is insatiable, and I still do it. Right now, it expresses itself most clearly through stretching, because I'm like regaining some mobility and some flexibility in my life that I haven't had for a long time. But I'll do it. I stretch and move myself a few times a day, and one of them is right before bed. I usually have a whiskey or a beer or something. I'm really loose in my body, take a shower, and I'll get into it. You and I were talking about just forward bends, stretching our hammies. Dude. And I'll fucking get into a stretch and it's like deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm in uncharted territory, but I'm greedy for more, man. It's just like, you fucking tweaker. Just like, go to bed.
That stretch before bed, I think, is as good as any drug I've ever taken for sleep. It is so powerful. And I can't get in bed unless I've done some stretching. Like, I feel so discombobulated if I get in bed and I can feel the tightness in my legs or lower back or whatever. I got to do it. It's the best.
Do you ever overstretch though? I mean, do you ever hurt yourself stretching?
Overstretch? No, dude.
Oh, really? I
No.
do.
Yeah.
Some of my worst injuries have been because of overstretching.
Oh, interesting.
Just go too far into something. Yeah.
I've definitely overused, like trying to get strong. Like I've done, I've hurt myself doing even pull-ups, but not overstretching.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was pretty awesome that she came on with us and that she hung out for quite a while. And when it was time for her to go, she was like, let's keep going. That's always a compliment.
Yeah.
I was glad.
Yeah,
She seemed like she got comfortable. And I really appreciated that she was very, just like there's that thing when you meet like people who are kind of famous and whatever, where you're like, oh, they're just a person. It's like, yeah, I get that. I've got that for quite a while. But I really was grateful that she spoke of her fears so candidly, and normalized. She seems like she's normalizing some things that would be easy in some worlds to avoid because you don't want to seem weak or something like that.
Yeah, I think also this is a wild guess around the climbing community. I don't know if this is true, what I'm about to say, but I wonder if people of that level, and especially folks who are quote unquote pros, they've got a full-time living. I wonder if it gets difficult and draining and like hard on the brain and mind, like because your success is equated with your ability to tick these routes. In other words, to like do these crazy hard things all the time. And I wonder if it becomes like a singer-songwriter writing a really good hit and they got to go do it again. They've got a 3-album contract and everyone's got to be a banger, and that pressure. And it seems like she's like short-circuited that pressure immediately by retaining her job, having great boundaries with her partner around their time together. And like her food, the way she eats, like she's just like, seems like, or even the way when we asked her about meditation, she's like, nah, I'm hopeless.
Yeah, thank you. That's probably what almost all of us should say.
Yeah, that's right. That should be the answer with every single one of us. Yeah, well said.
One of my favorite books is a book called Reincarnation Blues, and it's a really good book. It's funny and it's thoughtful, and it's well written. And it's about, long story short, this guy who lives. He's on his 9,996th life. And in this world, every soul gets 10,000 lives. And if you don't reach enlightenment by 10,000 lives, then you get canceled, deleted, you're done. No more going back.
That's a fun concept.
Yeah, but he doesn't find this fact out until 5 lives to go. And so now he's like, oh shit. But it starts, the first scene is him in his 9,996th life. And he's kind of like a pretty sage 55-year-old guy, and he lives on a beach and he fishes, but really he gives people advice because everyone knows he's really wise. And I love her comment about meditating. Really reminds me of his comment about meditating, which is he sits down in the morning to meditate, and he lasts about 5 seconds, and then he goes, and then the narrator goes, but he was a pretty crappy meditator, so he cracked a beer at 7 o'clock in the morning and went fishing. It's just like, thank you. Meditation is just awful. It's almost like the big trick of meditation is recognizing that everyone is terrible at it.
Well, I was out on a quick run this morning, and I was thinking about the time it takes to get good at something, or the time it takes to get that we think we don't have, right? Like whenever you ask someone how they're doing, almost always it's some form of so busy, just so busy right now. Like it feels so full. And as I was running, I thought I'm following this plan. I found some plan that is like not based on mileage, but a number of minutes that you run per run.
Yeah.
And so there's no like, you don't need to keep a pace or anything like that. And but I was thinking about my phone and how many minutes a day I waste on my phone, right? And
wait. Are you really waste?
Hold on. Because I thought if I ever, when I get back to that point of thinking I don't have time, I'm gonna fucking open up my phone and see how much time I've wasted. Because there's my shit. That's where I can fit it in, right? And that's where I can like step in there. I mean, when I was, come on, dude, help me out here. What she
No,
was
because
talking
your
about,
time is relaxing. That's what you're doing on your phone. You need that time. Do you want me to support?
dude,
And I'm
it's
kind of playing
okay.
devil's advocate a little bit,
Okay.
but like
Okay.
you need a fucking steam valve that can like release where you are wasting time. That's okay.
Okay.
You
But
drive yourself bonkers if every minute of every day is like Dan Pena level of productive.
yeah, I don't need that. But I do need to have moments in my day where I am doing something that's moving my life towards my bigger goals. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people get stuck. That's my point. It's like everybody has something in their life where they like want to apply for a job that's different than the one they're at.
Yeah.
They want to like pick up that hobby that they've been thinking about a long time. They want to, whatever. And when I was listening to her talk about the insane effort it took in Pakistan to get to the beginning of the route.
Yeah.
50 hours in that gully. I was like, we don't often know. If we knew how much effort it would take to go do something, maybe it would be better. Like, hey, this is going to take a long ass time. It's going to be really hard. It's going to be really unpleasant. But if you do it, you get up there. Or, if you just pay for it, would you be willing to do it? Yeah. And I'm kind of, she said it at least twice in some form. And she goes, you have to be in love with the process. And what she's really saying is like, I love fucking, wallowing in misery in a gully as much as I like any other part of this. And that's, I think, where you and I have been like, kind of like, slowly dancing around that part of our life for a while, where we're finally getting into it. I'd say like, we're actually like settling into that. Like, this is the process. It's kind of gut wrenching. Sometimes it's monotonous, but damn, it moves us forward. And when we do it, it feels damn good.
Yeah, and really recognizing where you're at. And I hear you about the time on your phone thing, because in the story you're telling, the thing that you're wanting to make time for is running. And that is something that if you do have time and that can breathe and you can spend that 60 minutes running, not trying to click off a certain amount of mileage, that can be your release valve. That can be a better release valve than maybe half of those minutes on the phone. I just also am a proponent of, well, in the process you and I have given our lives to, which is kind of authentic living, balanced living, thriving, I think that loving that you spend too many hours on the phone, and that's where you're at, and let's make that 2 hours too many down to hour 50, and like, that's a success. Awesome. And I'm just all about that process and it being okay. And I have a good example of that's a short one, and it has to do with the phone. I like to take breaks from my phone. I'm sorry, I don't like it, I hate it, but I think it's important. And so I was like, I'm going to set a timer for 1 hour, and I'm going to set it over and over and over all day long. And every hour I can check my phone for 5 or 10 minutes. Yeah. And then it's down for 50 minutes. It's away and I'm not looking at it. And then the next hour hits, ding, it goes off. I'll look at my phone again. And I was like, that's a cool plan. I get to use my phone all day still, but I take 50-minute breaks. Easy. Not easy. Total fail on that one. And I went down from doing it, like, to check it off in my little integration list that I do, I would check it off if I did it all day long. Never got checks. And I was like, maybe I need to lower my standards, which is really hard for me to do. So I did. And now it's not even that I complete even one of those. It's just that I pick my phone up once a day and I start that timer, just give myself a shot at completing 1 hour of taking a break, And if I do that, I get a check. And then when I check that off enough times, then I'll up it. But I kind of was like, that's cool, like, another person is a little harder on themselves. Maybe they say they would fail. But for me, I think that that's where I'm at, and that's the process, and that's okay.
I want to deep dive on that with you, and we'll have to save it for another time, because I think a lot of us suffer from being really hard on ourselves.
Agreed. 1,000. Yeah.
And knowing your story through both our conversations, but then also your writing, like you had a period of your life as a runner where you were, like, to say you were hard on yourself would probably be a kind of an understatement.
It's cracking the whip all day. It's awful.
I want to talk about that sometime, about your journey into being nicer to yourself and gentler on your existence.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it with you because I know you have a lot of that experience too, and it's been a little different than mine. But it's when you're around a society that everyone's really hard on themselves in the wrong ways and not hard enough on themselves in also the wrong ways. It's confusing, and I shouldn't say everybody, but it's rampant. There's other areas in my life where I don't give myself that allowance. I've given too much of that allowance in the past. Now it's time to get busy. It's just that I can't apply that to every little fucking part of my life. I go crazy. So it's interesting. I conserve and I apply my diligence and my discipline acutely and carefully instead of just like applying it to my whole life.
Dan, thanks for putting this together, man.
I couldn't do it without you. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You're the one that came up with Babsi.
Well, I sent you a list of people, and you've been bringing it home, man, like super well. Yes, so
awesome. Thank you. For that.
That's amazing. And Babsi was an awesome guest, and I don't care who loves it. I had such a good time talking to her and being inspired by what she's doing.
Did you feel like you get to scratch your climbing itch a little bit?
Yeah, man. I actually, like, when I was getting prepared for this call and watching her stuff, I'm like, here's how I got started climbing, Daniel. I got started climbing being a 7 or 8 year old boy in Roswell, New Mexico. And I saw something on TV that was like some kind of like Wild World of Sports or something around climbing. And I immediately went outside and started climbing my fence and like would get up on my roof of my house and just climb whatever I possibly could. And then fast forward a few years later in like 1994, a woman named Lynn Hill was the first woman to free climb El Capitan, first person ever in history to do it. And Lynn Hill is considered like the matriarch of modern climbing. Very, 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 very famous, accomplished person. It took climbers, a male climber, another 20 years to go complete what she'd done. Like that's how ahead of the game it was. Yeah, it's super badass. Yeah, we should get Lynn Hill on here sometime. And that lit me up because I am always the kind of guy that if I don't know anything about sports, but if I'm watching sports, I immediately root for the underdog. I'm just into it. And I love come up stories and I love underdog stories. And when the thing you think shouldn't be the thing happens. 100%. And Lynn Hill was that, man. I mean, she was a very accomplished. I don't want to say she was already an amazing climber, but no one thought a woman could do it. And she faced a lot of like real sexist shit in that process. And she was fucking badass about it. Her quote afterwards was, "It goes, boys." And that was a direct, fucking, kick in the face to the men.
It goes, boys, like it went, like
yep.
I just.
Yep. Yeah.
What a nice little moment at the end of that for her.
Yeah.
It goes, boys. That's 3 words that echo in climbing lore, I assume.
They totally have. They're still considered. So that's what got me into climbing and still inspires me. And I felt some of that watching Babsi climb because she's pushing the limit so hard, but having so much fun as she's doing it. There was a video a couple of years of her and another young woman climbing in the Alps on really, really difficult terrain, and to watch them, you could consider it the edge of what's possible, and they were climbing a route that was, the guy who put it up was like known as kind of being like a sadist, like you get on his shit and you're gonna be afraid and it's dangerous. And to see these 2 women laughing, having a good time, talking about it afterwards, I was like, we need to see that. We need to see people face hard things, not take it so seriously, to enjoy it, to really enjoy the process.
And at the same time, because I watched her video this morning, it brought me to tears several times. And it wasn't the laughter and stuff like that. It was that she would climb something the narrator, which I think was her, was doing a
Mm.
really good job of talking about how much it took to get to this place. And by the time you're watching, the filming was really good. You're like, and you can see from like a couple feet above where her hand is, her reaching, and you can really see what she's trying to do.
Yeah.
And then she would fall, and you would watch her fall, 20 feet.
Dude, no, those
And
were monster falls.
She was pissed, man. She was
Yeah.
like, not pissed. She was really disappointed and really upset. And there was a sense of loss,
Yeah.
So there's that too.
But then I watched the same video, and then the second later, she's on the ground looking up, thinking about it and smiling.
There's life, man.
And I was like, that's it. It all belongs. And her ability to switch between those modes of like feeling the feelings of like, I remember her calling out Scheisse, like that she fell. That was perfect. And then she, I think, even says in that video, like, you've got to love the process, and is looking up at it and is like looking at it, admiringly. Like that's beautiful, man. That's like, that's the real deal.
Well said, amigo.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Thank you, Babsi. See you guys later.
Adios.
Adios.